Well, today, an absolute delight to have the chance to talk to Martin Sims. Um, Martin's one of the quiet guys who, behind the scenes, does more than anybody would imagine, but just gets on with it and is one of God's grafters, really. And of such is the kingdom of God. Without people like Martin, we'd all be poorer. But often, people like Martin, they just get on and they would never push themselves forward. And so it's an absolute delight, Martin, to spend some time with you. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, just so people get a context for you.
I'm Martin Sims, the husband of a much more famous Yvonne Sims. And I became a Christian when I was in my early teens. We lived in London. My family were not Christians. And I went to a Pathfinder camp over in Jersey. And that's where I was led to the Lord.
What was the connection with the Pathfinder camp? Who
I was a member of Pathfinders, which was a young, well, it's now boys and girls, but in those days it was boys.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'd been in the church choir and things like that. It was a Church of England.
Yeah.
So it was that sort of line. And a very, very good friend, he's still my good friend after all these years, was instrumental in bringing me to the Lord.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And so, as a teenager, now as a Christian teenager, how did life unfold for you then? What happened?
Well, it got a bit complicated because we lived in London, and my father got a job, and so we moved out to Oxfordshire, or as it was in those days, Berkshire. The boundary changed, but it was something of a shock to the system to go to a very quiet, small, rural village.
Mm-hmm.
He worked for the Atomic Energy Authority, so there was a good reason for him moving. And that was not long after I'd become a Christian, when I got involved in the church in Harwell, which was the village I lived in. They said, "Would you teach in our Sunday school?" So, yeah, I said yes. And the first session, I went along in a certain amount of trepidation. And the topic was taken from the Apocrypha.
Okay.
I hadn't even realised that there was an Apocrypha. I rapidly found out.
Yeah.
It's the only time I've ever had to look at it.
Right. Okay.
And I went on teaching in what was then Sunday school into my 50s in various churches.
Okay.
I told them when we got married, when I married Yvonne, that was over 50 years ago, that we wouldn't remain teaching in the Sunday school. She was a Pathfinder teacher, very romantic. And I said we wouldn't remain teaching there because we hadn't got contact during the week with the young people. But I said, we'll hand over gently. And I had a knock on the door from the local, we lived then in Abingdon, and I had a knock on the door from the local Baptist minister who said, "Would you come and teach my young people?" Which I thought was God-driven, not something I had expected. We stayed there for a number of years, and then I moved on from there to the C of E Church in Abingdon, and I ran the big Sunday school.
Okay.
So that was the early days.
Yeah, but that you said that went on for a lot of years. Your work with your
Oh yes.
sort of.
It got to the stage where I was teaching the children of the parents I taught. Quite literally.
Yeah.
And when I got into my 50s, it was at a different church out in Cambridgeshire because we'd had to move because I was made redundant. And I decided that it was probably, I'd done it for long enough and inflicted myself on young people for long enough.
Okay.
So we moved on to other things.
So you were doing this in church life, but what was your working life? What was?
I was a mad scientist.
Hmm.
I'm a chemist by training, and I've worked for the University of Oxford in the Department of Metallurgy. I did that 10 years. I did 14 years with Esso Petroleum as a scientist. And then it sort of changed because in the beginning I was really into the analytical side of things, and it developed into health and safety. When health and safety was a noble topic, um, and I felt that we were doing a very good job.
Yeah.
When you have a refinery close to Southampton, and if something goes wrong, you demolish the Southampton. Things are
Yeah.
quite serious, you know.
Yeah. Health and safety takes on a whole new.
Oh yes, and trying to send people home at the end of the day in one piece.
Yeah.
And then I had a brief period where I was a consultant, and that also involved environmental science. And then my final years were with a company called Eternit, which they had previously manufactured asbestos material.
Hmm.
Again, not something you mess about with.
Mm.
And the words that the managing director said to me were, "We want to come out of using asbestos without incident." And we managed it.
Right.
So that was a major um, move, but it
Yeah.
was still within the same sort of topic. And the good thing about it was that I looked after several factories. One of them was at Widnes. Another one was, the main one was at Royston down in the south, but there was one at Widnes and there was one at Blackburn. And I used to go and visit them. And to give them a fair chunk of time, I would come up for 2 days every fortnight. And at this stage, my daughter had moved across to be part of the Message Trust, in the sense that she was part of their outreach, where people were living in the area. And she was a midwife. So I would come up and I would work all day, and then I would go to her place and do her house up. And then I'd go back down south.
Mm-hmm. Was this in Langworthy?
Yes, she's in Pembroke Street.
Right.
So not far from where we live now.
Yeah.
She's moved into Derby Road, but that was where she was.
Yeah.
And she was, at that stage, involved with Langworthy Community Church to an extent. But I actually, because of my trips up, I was involved with Langworthy Community Church from when they started pretty well. So
Right.
even before I'd lived here.
Right. Okay.
So, I was involved in that. And that's why we were part of Langworthy Community Church for quite a long time. And we moved across to Elim about 6 years ago, something like that, when we were in the sense that we had a union with Langworthy Community Church. And they would come on a semi-ad hoc basis. But Yvonne and I came on a more regular basis.
You were a bit more than ad hoc. So this move from the south to the north, what made it feel right for you? I mean, I know your daughter was here, and I'm sure there was a relational, pull, but
yeah. I won't deny there was a relational aspect, but we both felt that we were being called up here to be grandparents within Langworthy Community Church.
Right.
And that was the sort of age difference between the oldest ones in Langworthy Community Church and ourselves. And so we felt that we could be of some use to help leaders, because they could feel quite isolated.
Mm. Mm.
And so we did that.
Mm. What do you think you've come to appreciate about God over these years? What matters to you about God?
His consistency, the fact that he loves me in spite of me, and also it's unconditional. I've always felt that we were taught correctly by the leaders in the Pathfinders but there was a gap there, and the gap was there was very little taught about the Holy Spirit,
Mm.
and that wasn't out of any malicious sense. It was purely ignorance on their part. And later on, the guy who was my mentor used to come across to where we lived, and he was involved in spirit-led meetings, and so it had an impact on him. So it was a two-way relationship. But I've always believed that there was this original split with God that needed to be healed, and that it was a matter of love, not onerous duty, and that we were here to try and encourage people in that aspect, to try and encourage people to come to Christ and to see his love and care.
What difference did it make to you when you encountered the Holy Spirit in a fresh way for yourself?
It just seemed sort of right and natural. I'm sorry, but there wasn't any big blinding light. But it seemed as though there was a gap that had been filled in.
Yeah.
It sort of it made the rest of it more sense, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Yeah. So here you are at this stage of life, and what's taking your attention now? What do you spend your days doing?
Well, we have a gorgeous granddaughter, and we've been involved with her since she was born, and I'm still involved with her because I do granddad duty.
A fine thing. A fine thing.
I'm part of her bubble.
Yeah.
And so my daughter is a key worker. And on Mondays and Thursdays and Fridays, I collect Layla from school and take her to her home and look after her there until her mum comes back. So that is a delight.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've also felt led into the sort of food parcel side of things because of the need, and that was really out of a concern for asylum seekers, and that went back right almost to the beginning with LCC. In fact, there was a couple who we knew quite well, and they had a house on Alpha Street, and they actually rented it out so it could be used by asylum seekers. And we found that the system, that is the sort of the governmental side of things, it had severe holes in it, and people were getting left out and poorly treated. When you hear stories of people being put out onto the street, basically, at a moment's notice with their clothes and things locked up inside a house they've been renting. It was just appalling, some of the things that were going on. And we felt the need that they should be provided for as best we could. We couldn't do a huge amount, but we could do something. And Yvonne has headed that up. I'm the logistics.
You're the grafter in the background that makes sure it happens.
And she's been brilliant. And out of that came the knowledge that there were groups of children in some of the poorer parts of the area who weren't being looked after during the holidays, school holidays. They would get school dinners when they were in school. And so we started up, it runs at about just under 28, yes, about 28 children in a particular area that we provide a light meal for 3 times a week during holidays.
That's remarkable. That's remarkable. It really is. So as you look forward, I suppose 2 things really. What would you want to say to folks in Elim? Kind of like what would you want to remind them? What would you want to encourage them about? And what would you want them to pray for you about?
Well, the first thing is that we have felt tremendously welcomed. We joined officially, so to speak, around Christmas time, but because we were well known, it didn't feel like a big jump.
No.
And it was a perfectly amicable departure from LCC. We just felt that we were getting older and we needed some support ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Yvonne's been through quite a lot, as you know, medically. And so the people like the crafty crew and people like that, they've been a big help. And you know, they have been a real benefit and a blessing.
Mm.
The Peacocks have been tremendous.
Mm.
Big thumbs up to them. And so, yes, continue doing that. Continue being open and welcoming, because that makes a huge difference. And the danger is that you get people who come in to church and then you lose them out the back door because you haven't made them feel that they're wanted, which is a sad thing.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very important to look outward.
Yeah.
And to have a missionary zeal and all the rest of that. But if you then lose the people that you've collected,
yeah,
you in some senses you haven't achieved anything.
Yeah.
Apart from possibly a lot of hurt.
Yeah.
So that's the positive side that we have picked up from Elim. And yourself.
Thank you very much.
I would like to just say, look after your oldies. I've had time to reflect over the last few days in preparation for this. I just give thanks to God for my father. My mother as well, but my father in particular. He was a quiet gentleman. He was a gentleman in both senses. There was a rumour that if you asked him a question, he wouldn't answer, and you'd ask him another question and he'd answer the first. Because he thought about things. He was a lovely man. And I was greatly blessed to have him as a father. He wasn't Christian, but he had a real sense of what was right. When I look back, I can't see, I know it's rose-coloured spectacles, but I can't see any negatives, apart from the fact that he never really took me into his workshop and taught me how to do things. I had to pick that up myself. And as for praying for me, I have, throughout my life, generally been frustrated by things, not people, but by things. It's the Haynes manual that says, undo the nut. And an hour later, you're still struggling with it. You're thinking, this shouldn't be like this. And there are things that should be straightforward and easy and just basically simple. And they end up not being. So I get frustrated with that. And that frustration continues. But my manual dexterity has reduced over the years, so my fingers have got bigger, and I don't hit the right buttons on the computer or on the cell phone. You know.
Yeah.
But it's beginning to spread across to people, so I need patience.
Okay. I didn't. I wondered where all that was going, but now I'm with you. I'm kind of yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I didn't find it a problem when Yvonne was going through all the operations. You know, I would just trundle her in and out and do what was required. But now we've come out at the other end of that, and she is in long-term pain. And we don't see a way out until probably after Christmas. I need patience. She's a lovely lady, and I wouldn't swap her.
Well, that's reassuring. I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing to be prayed for. I think there are a couple of things just to pick up on really from what you've been saying. Firstly, is just that sense of compassion for some of the folks in our city who are at the bottom of the rung, really. And just I think the remarkable thing that you and Yvonne and others have been able to do and continue to do, and just want to, I suppose, honor that and recognize that. But then that talk of honoring as well is about, isn't it, about honoring fathers and mothers, about recognizing actually that part of honoring is being grateful for, giving space to, but also supporting one another as we get older, and not cast aside and not forgotten about, but listened to, and the wisdom of the age. It strikes me that you're a good example of getting old, in as much as you're very encouraging to others, that you receive well, but you also give really well to others. And we are glad that you're part of us. And as that continues, and as more and more folks get to know you, I know that they'll appreciate you for who you are, and what God's done in you, and continue to do through you. So thanks for the time just to chat together, and we will pray for patience, both for your fingers that you won't hit them too often, and your patience with people around you, that you will continue to be gracious with them, and that God will continue to use you. Thanks ever so much, Martin.
Thank you.